It's an honor to be here with everyone today. I'm Megan Bedell. I'm a Senior Acquisitions Editor at Corwin, in charge of our equity and professional learning lists. And it's an honor to be here to introduce Dr. Denise Furlong and Dr. Keri Orange-Jones. Dr. Denise Furlong is an assistant professor and director of advanced programs for reading specialists and ESL for Georgian Court University. She has taught for over 25 years in the New Jersey public school system, ranging from kindergarten through 12th grade. She's also has mentored and coached both novice and veteran teachers over the years. Dr. Keri Orange-Jones is a middle school assistant principal and adjunct professor at Montclair University and William Patterson University. She has been an educator for 27 years. Keri is also part of the Drew Writing Project and National Writing Project. She has offered her insight as a guest speaker on podcasts and several virtual PLCs. She's also published blogs, journal articles, and contributed to other publications. Both Denise and Keri are advocates for equity and accessibility for all students, and they've come together to write the beautiful new book, Learners First: Purpose and Practicality in Your Early Years of Teaching, that just came out with Corwin in April. So I am very excited to hear from them today. And without further ado, I turn it over to Denise and Keri.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, cool. I guess I'll jump in here. Hi, my name is Keri Orange-Jones, and as Megan said, thank you for the introduction, Megan. I am an assistant principal in a middle school in Central Jersey, or Northeast New Jersey, in Essex County. I am an adjunct professor at William Patterson and Montclair State University. Definitely a presenter. I'm owner and proprietor of my own LLC, Intellectually Yours. And a couple of things about me, as you see, I love books, it's a surprise. It's not a surprise that I wrote a book. It is to me sometimes because I sat still long enough to do this. And Denise was very much my inspiration in the process. I did contribute a chapter to this book, Things I Wish I Knew, as well as in the process of doing some more work with Denise for future publications. I love to travel. I love the beach, and I didn't put food on here, but I really, really enjoy food. So, Denise?
So I'm Denise, and I have the whistle because I'm a coach, an instructional coach. I have the GCU mascot, Rory, and one of the things I like to do with my family is tour baseball stadiums. So that's kind of something different about me. Tell Your Dog I Said Hi. That is a charity that I have a ton of their merch, but like they really support homeless dogs. And the book over there, the blue one with the sunflowers, that was my first book, and it is a book that is used for educators of multilingual learners. And yeah, love the beach too. So nice to be here. Thank you so much for joining us.
So let's just jump into some of the things that we thought is important to discuss on the webinar. Things that are close to our heart in the book. So starting off with being equity innovators in the classroom, and even beyond the classroom. I don't want to get into things too deeply, but when you're in the classroom and you're a novice educator or even a veteran educator, ensuring that there's equity in your classroom and students are comfortable is very important. Your classroom is essentially their home away from home, and you want them to be comfortable in their space. You want them to be comfortable in their skin. I always tell the students, live your truth. And they come to me, every day, not just for the discipline, because I do a lot of the discipline here as the assistant principal, but just because they know this is a safe space. For them to really be their true, authentic selves, whatever that may be. But that's just the administrator's office. What does that look like in the classroom? So I've only been an administrator for 3 years. I came into this position in 2022. So in my mind, I'm still a teacher. I'm always going to be a teacher. And some of the things that I discuss in the book and in the chapters or things that I wrote comes from my experience as a classroom teacher. So how can you be an equity innovator? The most important thing for me is when the students walked in the door, first day of school, even. And I'm from the Harry Wong school of thought, who Harry's like, take control. And I do believe that you want to set parameters in your classroom and guidelines and, get student feedback and ask them, about consequences or, giving them a voice. But in addition to that, you have to get to know the students in your classroom. Who are they? What are their likes and dislikes? What are their learning preferences? Creating activities that allow them to share who they are and their hobbies. One of the things that I did do is create a Google form. Any class when I taught fifth grade, when I taught seventh grade science, these are the questions that I asked the students. And they put in a Google form. So one, it just gives you an idea of who is sitting in front of you, but it also gives them a chance to share these things with you in a way that is confidential. Some students aren't going to come and tell you, I like to knit, or, you might have a young man who loves ballet. Then some of them might be reluctant to share those types of things in a public forum. So you use the Google form with these questions to give them an idea of how to share this information. Things as like nicknames, preferred pronouns. Am I able to use these nicknames or pronouns in front of your grown-ups? Those things are really, really important to me. But also being mindful of your biases or preconceived notions. I think that's a big thing for anyone, because there's no person in the world, I don't care who you are, without a bias. We all have some type of bias or preconceived notion. How easy is it for us to check those at the door? Not necessarily easy for everyone, but it's something that we have to consciously be intentional about doing. Be mindful of your role and your position. I do understand, and I'm an assistant principal, and I'm already operating from a place of power, but you can't use your power and your privilege in every single situation, regardless of where you come from. As a Black female who grew up in Jersey City, I am aware of the fact that, I went to school and I have a degree and I have a doctorate. So I am operating from a different position with some of my students who might not have been exposed to that. But so I go in gently. That's not what I lead with. I lead with, I'm Dr. Jones. I am your assistant principal. I'm here to advocate for you. And let's go from there. How can I better serve you? What can I do to help you? Those are the things that you need to do for your students in creating a safe and brave space, a safe space for them to have conversations and be their authentic self with you, but also allowing them to be brave when they speak to you, so they know that they can come to you and not be judged. And, I always tell people, if you feel as though you can't serve a child to the best of your ability, then you need to be an advocate for that child, regardless of what your thoughts are, your positions are, whether it be religious or political or anything else. Your personal beliefs are great to have, but your job, first and foremost, is to advocate for your students, the people in front of you. And if you cannot do that, then be a voice for that student and find the person that can assist them. So these are just some of the things, and there's more about it in the book. But if you start here, basically finding a way to talk to the students and find out who they are, and a connection, that will take you, a long way with some of your students. Denise.
Okay. So we could talk about mentors. We still have mentors. Keri's one of my mentors. And what we could think about is not always, when we are starting out in our career, you might think of the university mentors or your CTs or the supervisors. You could also kind of engage with people that are in the same boat as you. So I always think of a mentor has to be someone that is that expert. Well, no, it could be someone that's learning alongside you, and you have some strengths and that person has some strengths, and you both make each other better. And going into this as a first, second, third year teacher, really, we know that our new teachers come with fantastic funds of knowledge. You're not coming into this profession just as a sponge and just to kind of like soak up knowledge from other people. You really bring something, and you should hold your head up high. You'll have your former mentors that are probably assigned by your school or the district or the state. The informal mentors will be those people that show you how to use the photocopy machine, that tell you how to order lunch, that maybe, could chaperone the dance with you. Those are the people that are kind of like that become your village. The formal mentors will give you the stuff on your observations and, like your data collection and stuff like that. And the informal mentors will be the ones that kind of get you through day to day. Remembering that your students can be your mentors, their families, other community members. Going into your district as someone that, really can look to learn alongside people, that's going to be the game changer. Something that I found, those connections across the miles. I have mentors, friends, who I have met via these webinars, via social media, via, networking groups. Like, I have a very dear friend that is in Chicago, one in Texas, one in Florida, that I don't see on a normal basis. And before we ever met in person, we were those connections across the miles. We were those connections that I said, I'm lonely with what I'm doing. I need someone. I need someone to kind of bounce ideas off. I need someone that thinks the same way as me. And that is those like that can give you those opportunities to kind of learn alongside people that are not in your physical space. So to be open to mentors outside the box, and also being open to being a mentor or someone to learn alongside.
So thanks, Denise. So let's talk about deficit mindset not being, inspiring feelings of efficacy. So efficacy is one of those things that is a passion of mine. I did my dissertation on teacher efficacy in the evaluation process. How does the evaluation process make teachers feel more or less efficacious about their practice? So the same thing can be said about students when you talk about a deficit mindset. When you use language or speech or interactions that are negative or based in the deficit thought, it does carry over into how students feel about themselves. How do they feel about their ability to achieve in the classroom? So I feel as though, all the chapters are important. I do believe that this chapter, for me personally, even in my own personal life, I try to use a more asset-based lens. Simple things like, and I love my mom all the time, and I always tell her, Mom, I need you to talk to me like I like my coffee light and sweet. You know what I mean? Like I don't want the negativity, because it can really affect how a person thinks about themselves, how children think about themselves in the classroom. And there's always a lot of speech when you think about it day to day. Take note of your daily interactions with people. I charge you, everyone who's on this webinar, who might see this webinar, to maybe take a day from the beginning of the school day to the end of the school day, to really inventory how much language is used during the day that is steeped in a deficit mindset. And if you do that one day for a week, and at the end, look at the language that you have, you will see that education, unfortunately, while we are in charge of educating everyone who's going to become anything in life, teachers, we've taught doctors, lawyers, police officers, whatever it is that you aim to do, teachers do it. And yet the deficit speech is prevalent in our vocation. And we are people who inspire children and adults to you can, like the I can mindset, but that's not the language that we hear all the time. So, deficit-based language doesn't empower students. When students hear things like, oh, you can't, or, comments in the classroom like, oh, you're never here in school, so that's why you're struggling. You don't know why that child is not in school. A high percentage of students come to school every day with some type of trauma, whether it is their parents are separated, or their mom is sick, or the grandfather passed away, or somebody lives far away, or they're moving. You just don't know what the trauma is that they're dealing with. Classifies a particular group of being inadequate. We've always talked about these kids, or the basic skills kids, or achievement gap, or learning loss. This language is steeped in, particular groups of students. I mean, if they hear the language all the time and they're classified in this way, what are they supposed to think about themselves? And then the other side of the coin is, if we keep using this language, what does that say about us as educators and how we see the students that's sitting in front of us? So recognizing the strengths and the potential in every student, that also comes from the Google form, right? Because when you use a form and you try to find out who is sitting in front of you, the students will tell you, you can always add, like, what are your hobbies? When they tell you what their hobbies are, that helps them, it helps you plan out instruction that meets their needs. I remember teaching science and social studies. I didn't want the students to always be on the computer. A lot of students said that they like to draw. So we started doing sketchbooks, they sketch noting their science notes. I'm diagramming and being able to explain experiments that help to cultivate a learning environment that values all contributions. So that leads right into that, right? So students were able to address their learning in a way that made them feel good about themselves, was creative, focusing on what students can do. Like, I know this student can diagram. I know this student can build things. And if they can build it and they might not be able to write about it, I can also get them to record their thoughts. All these things is like, what can you do and what can you do well? And we focus on that, and, building upon the students' existing knowledge, their experiences, their talents. Those things will pull students in. And then using asset-based speech all the time, even when they come into me for discipline, I try to use more asset-based, like, what could you have done differently? And I tell students, there's no such thing like you didn't make a mistake. It's a learning experience. The mistake comes when you don't learn and you repeat the behavior. And they gravitate towards that type of language. So no, we don't use the word mistake. I don't want to say, you're in trouble. Let's talk about what are your actions? What did you do? What could you have done differently? And when you meet people where they are with asset-based language, it opens them up to wanting to engage you. It opens students up to wanting to engage with you as an educator when you're coming at them in a positive way as opposed to a negative way. So there's something to think about, not just in the classroom, but in your day-to-day life with those people that you engage in with every day.
Oh, I'm going to add on.
Please. Okay.
So yeah, no, exactly what you were saying. And beyond the classroom, when you're in the hallway, when you're in the faculty room, when you are at the basketball games, when you're at the dinner table, when you're in your house, thinking about, how do you speak about these children? How do you speak about these families? How do you speak about this community? And, because I could put on a show, I could go into the classroom and be like, you're great, I believe in you. But if that doesn't run in my blood, if it doesn't run through my veins, then that's not authentic. So learn about your students, learn what makes them just incredible, and really, kind of embrace that. And not for nothing, when you're in the when you're in the hallway, kids hear you. If you whisper something to your colleague, kids hear you. And you know what? If they didn't hear you, they saw your face. So really, you have to really authentically engage.
Yes.
So
thank you, Denise.
We can go to the next one.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. So thinking about that, like, how are you going to learn about the school community? And some of us, either have done our student teaching where we wind up getting a job. Some of us perhaps come back to like the community where we grew up. I actually just taught in the high school that I graduated from, like recently, which was all sorts of weird. But no matter how much you think you know about the community, get to know it better.
Yeah.
So if you are, because things could change, or even as an educator in the community, what is it that you could contribute? What is it that you could learn? To being authentic and learning about like the different holidays and the different, norms and values of your students and their families, even if they are something that is, not what you have experienced. There could be many languages of your community, and nobody expects, we do have the polyglots that we are friends with that know many, many languages. But even if you have a reference guide, even if you're practicing, different like phrases or greetings or thank you and stuff like that in all your different languages, and use them in class, that just shows how much you value like linguistic diversity. And sometimes we talk about the challenges, but much like Keri's coffee, we need to talk about the light and sweet. We need to talk about the pride. We need to talk about the things that really are, areas that like give joy. So yes, we need to understand the challenges, and we have to understand the joys too. Don't think if you reach out to parents and or guardians and or community members without getting a response, do not think that they don't want to respond to you. I'm going to say it again. Don't think they don't want to respond, because there might be a roadblock that we, from our perspective, don't know. You don't advocate instead of anybody. You don't advocate for someone. You're not on the soccer field and they're not on the sidelines. You're playing defense, you're doing offense right next to them. So when you're advocating, you are amplifying voice, not your own voice, the voice of the families, of the community. You walk alongside, you don't play the game instead of them. Get involved, show up at the Hispanic heritage stuff, show up at the Egyptian church. I say that 'cause there's one right next to my house. Show up at the community events, show up at the baseball games, at the softball games, show up. And you know what? Like, I'm not saying that at the expense of your own family. I mean, my own kids will tell you that they have gone to several things that I went home, got them, we had dinner, or we did whatever we were going to do, and then we went back. Because you know what? That helps in building trust, and it helps as you are getting to know that school community.
Yeah. In addition, I'm gonna just jump on, like, if you aspire to be like a supervisor or even an administrator, the parents in the community have a very long memory. I have phone numbers in my phone from parents that I taught. I taught them, and then their kids and things like that, and they remember and they will support you in all your endeavors. I work in a community where we have a lot of small businesses, owned by women, minority business owners. And, I try to patronize them, and they remember that stuff. So when it's time to do things in your classroom or in your school community, they're willing to donate. We have a student here now whose mom does popsicles, and they're really good too, by the way. So this is a plug for Purist Platas. But she will volunteer to bring, treats to the school. They're going to donate some treats for a contest that we're having. So those things, I call it like social equity. You get involved, and the parents see it, and it goes a long, long way. And the communication piece, which Denise said, like, that's really important, because we assume that everyone has access to Wi-Fi, and we're talking about, communities where the socioeconomic status can be very diverse, where someone might be able to afford Verizon every month and have Wi-Fi. Then you do have some parents who, both parents are working, some might be working 2 jobs or more to make ends meet and can't afford to have Wi-Fi. So always having some communication with the students to find out the best way to engage your parents if you don't hear from the parents. All these things can go back to the form that I discussed earlier. the best ways to reach, you tell kids what's the best way to reach your grown up, so we can, keep parents involved and keep those lines of communication open. Again, like Denise said, without judgment, because you just don't know what goes on outside the school walls when the kids leave to go home at the end of the day.
And the challenges and joys.
So alphabet soup. All these letters, like I remember, so let me give a little bit of background. I'm an alternate route teacher. I didn't go to school to be an educator. I kind of like tripped and fell into this. I have a degree in criminal justice, and I took the test on a whim. A former mentor of mine, the late Calvin Hart, was like, "You would be a great teacher," and I was like, "Oh my God, I don't even like kids," but here I am, going on year 28, right? 25 in the classroom, 3 as an administrator. So, apparently he saw something that I didn't see. All these things here were things that kind of threw me a little bit, and in this day and age, it's stuff that you need to know. RTI and MTSS, response to intervention, and the multi-tiered systems of support, they go hand in hand. RTI is part of MTSS. So when you have a student who's in your classroom and you start to notice that there's some potential learning issues, you start to meet with your team. Like in our situation here at my school, we have teams. At the elementary school level, when I taught, I met with my co-teachers and we sat down and we discussed across curricula where a student might have had some gaps. And, we decided that we wanted to INRS the student. We would meet with the INRS team and start looking at ways to assist the students, what kind of interventions that we put into place. And when you're doing these interventions, making sure that you log them. It's the most important thing. If we don't say anything else is important, is make sure that you document, and keep track of all the interventions that you use. We use the Prim book, and we go through it and you choose interventions, and I need to track them because maybe I'm teaching social studies and science, which is what I did teach, and Denise is teaching ELA, especially with social studies and ELA, which is very text heavy. I might find an intervention that worked with a student, and I would say to Denise, this is an intervention that you might want to try, and vice versa. So making sure that you use these interventions and you document these interventions to better assist the students in your classroom. Ultimately, if that doesn't work, of course, you go to the CST, which is the child study team, which is another set of letters I should have put on here. And if necessary, and if with parent permission, the child study team would, do an evaluation. And if they find that the child needs services and they will come up with, and they become classified, you can get an IEP, which is an individual education plan. And in that plan, you'll have, is a student going to be a pull-out resource? Is a student going to be an inclusion class where they get instruction in the general ed classroom with a special ed teacher and a gen ed teacher? Depends on the classification of the student. So now if a child is tested or assessed and they find that there's nothing wrong, sometimes you may need a 504 plan for a student who might need speech or not speech, but have a hearing impediment. Like I had a student once who had to wear a hearing aid and he got a 504 plan. Students with ADD or ADHD tend to get 504 plans because they can learn, but they just need some assistance in some crucial areas that will better assist them. Last but not least, DCP&P in New Jersey is the Division of Child Protection. In some places they call it CPS, Child Protection Services. This is really important. I found that while working with student teachers, this is a conversation that's not really had. Like, when do you need to call Child Protective Services? I've had some situations when I've acted as an administrator where a child did, make an allegation to a student teacher who did not know the process, and ultimately the child went home and we didn't find out to the next day that the child had made the claim. I say all this to say that it's really important that you find out what the protocols are in your building in relation to calling Child Protective Services, because if a student makes an allegation to you, then you are by law, especially in New Jersey, required to report. So I ask all of you to make sure that whether you're a veteran or a novice teacher, what does that look like in your school or in your school district? What is the protocol for calling Child Protective Services if you need to, in case something is going on in the life of a child outside of school.
And as educators, we are mandated reporters.
Mhm.
And if we know that there is something going on like that, or even if we have the inkling, sometimes I've been in a situation where I was like, well, I don't really know if this is something, that I need to bring to someone's attention or that I need to report. Err on the side of caution, because you don't want, God forbid, something to happen and you have not said anything.
Mhm.
One more that we forgot, HIB.
Yeah, yes. HIB is important.
Harassment, intimidation, and bullying.
Yes.
And again, there is a procedure to that you need to, if you overhear something, if someone reports something to you,
Mhm.
and all of these, like, they're very timely. Like, that would be something that you stop what you're doing and either make the phone call or send an email or get an admin. It's not something that you could think about it for a week and then address it. So.
And here in my school district, we have something we use called Hipstervention. So I'm thinking that a lot of districts, especially in New Jersey particularly, are starting to use programs where you can file a HIB, and our parents are directed to a website where they go and they fill out a form to start an investigation for harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So yes, so that will come in the second edition.
Yeah, girl.
Extra letters to put out there for you. But thank you, Denise, for adding that.
So connection and belonging, something that I find super, super important, and it becomes more important as I learned more about becoming a teacher. How do we don't want our students to feel like they fit in. We want them to belong. So in doing that, we as educators are listening and learning, and we're modeling listening and learning, and we're modeling the fact that what people have to say is worthwhile. Even going back to the harassment, intimidation, and bullying, like, we don't want people to feel like they can't speak up. Be generous and judicious. Like, so that's what we were saying before. You coming in, you have a ton of great knowledge. Be generous and sometimes know when to, kind of listen and learn with your colleagues. So definitely share what you have, and you hope that your colleagues will share with you as well. And all the veteran teachers, because this book is made for, like, the mentorship programs and the college and university programs. So we do know that, the CTs, the cooperating teachers, and the veteran teachers are taking this journey, hopefully right alongside our newest colleagues. So where you sit at lunch as a teacher, yes, makes, people are like, oh, stay out of the faculty room, it's all negative. Sometimes there have been years where I definitely did, for a variety of reasons. Maybe it was negative, maybe I just didn't have lunch with any of my besties that year, maybe because my kids were involved in so many sports, I needed to have a working lunch so I can get my grading done. It's more than that, but that is a start. So if you decide that, at your lunchroom or in your professional learning community or your grade level meetings or at your mentorship meetings, bring the positive. Bring the, the listening ear. Sometimes we listen in order to respond. Listen in order to process, listen in order to understand. And those are the ways that you make those connections. And those are the ways that people feel that what they have to say is valuable and people want to hear them. Collaborating, saying, hey, just like we said before, like, we just make each other better. And then asking questions. Like, I talk about that, with students all the time. Like, that's how people see that you're interested. That's how your students, Keri was saying, asked about the sports, ask about your interests. And also acknowledge people beyond their roles. So if there's a staff member that typically helps you in a certain way, maybe just say hello. You don't have to, oh, when you see that staff member, oh, I need something, or, can you help me with this?
Mhm.
Maybe acknowledge that, oh, I hope you have a nice weekend, something beyond what they could do for you.
Mhm.
Just being, a kind and generous colleague as well.
I'm sorry, I jumped the gun.
You're good. Go right ahead. There you go.
Observations and data collection. This is another one of my favorites because teacher evaluation is I have a love-hate relationship with teacher evaluation. Kind of like I have a love-hate relationship with student assessment, but that's another conversation for another day. That's the next book.
Or two, Keri.
Teacher evaluation is I see it as a growth model. I personally don't think it's a tool that should be used to be punitive. If used correctly, it's supposed to be used to help teachers become the best version of themselves in the classroom, using data and feedback to inform your practice. So, a lot of times teachers get anxiety about it. And that's what made me do my dissertation on evaluation and efficacy. Because if you're a good teacher, and people know that you're a good teacher outside of the 2 observations. So if you're non-tenured, I think it's 4 in New Jersey. If you're tenured, it's 2. Anything can happen on any given day. You could be teaching like your heart, is about to explode, and then little Johnny gets sick to his stomach and, projectile vomits. This happened legitimately, just really happened to a teacher here a couple of weeks ago. You have no idea what's going to happen to you on a day-to-day. Is it fair to be judged on an isolated incident? When you teach 180 to 185 days a year, 2 days is not enough to really gauge whether a teacher is effective or not. And it goes beyond the classroom, right? It's not just what you do in the classroom, but also what you do outside the classroom. Do you go to student games? Do you go to not just like school nights, but in your district, we have like Italian night, we had Chinese New Year, we have all these different events that happen outside of the walls, the brick and mortar of our personal school. What are you doing in the district? All these things, and kids see you and they gravitate towards you. That's really what makes you an effective teacher. But I believe that the evaluation process should be used, if it's used accurately, to sit in dialogue with a teacher, with your administrator or your supervisor, to talk about a lesson and really dissect, like, what are you going to do? What is it I'm going to see? How can you improve your practice? Offer suggestions. And then, I go into classrooms and I observe, and then I come back with, well, you should not, this wasn't done right, or this isn't done right. I'll offer real, tangible advice as to what you could do to improve practice. Like, maybe next time you should try this. I think I had a situation one time where the students had to do a lot of reading, and they were going to stations. And I remember saying to the teacher, I thought the lesson was great. However, what would it look like if you front loaded the information that the students had to read, especially since she had some MLs in the classroom? What would it look like if you gave the students the data, the reading? If you're planning on doing the scavenger hunt in these stations on Wednesday, you can give them the readings by Monday to let the students go through it and annotate it. So then you save time when they're actually going through the stations, and then not having to sit there and constantly like read and highlight. And she took the information and she tried it again with another section, and she came back after the fact and was like, that was a great idea. I'm glad I tried it. Creating opportunities to observe peers. So for me, when I was doing alternate route, I did have a mentor that I paid for, but I also went to my principal and asked if I could do school business days. And on those school business days, I went and I sat and I observed my peers, and it helped inform my practice. Collecting student work.
Can I pop in right before you go into that?
Yes.
So here's the thing. Sometimes when I get feedback, like Keri was just talking about, I feel like I currently feel, I can't even tell you. sometimes I feel like it's someone telling me I'm doing something wrong. Just take it for like, I then realized it's part of their job to help us get better. So if there is something on these observations that maybe you didn't think of, or maybe you didn't want to hear, or maybe something everybody wants to see you succeed. So when you hear those things about, oh, maybe try this, or maybe front load the vocabulary, or, remember to have like talk about the objective and things like that. Everybody just wants you to succeed. So, and you know what? And if your first year are full of, like perfect evaluations, how are you going to grow?
Exactly.
So definitely take and even with observing peers, take those opportunities to grow. And it's hard. It's hard because it's a vulnerable place. When we, maybe say like, oh, I might need help teaching this math concept. Can I go and observe somebody? But that is the way you're going to grow. And sometimes we do have to be in that vulnerable place. But my advice and Keri's advice is take the feedback, and I used to say, like, well, give me something that I can try. Give me something. That's why you're making that salary over there, like. So, but it is still hard. So you're still gonna have sweaty armpits, and you're gonna be nervous, butterflies in your stomach. But yeah, have faith.
Yeah.
Have faith that those observations are gonna get you to where you need to be.
Right. But also remembering that you're constantly learning, because
Yeah.
I mean, you can get where you think you need to be, but also be open to the fact that you're going to have to learn more in order to be an effective educator. That like you have to put yourself in the mindset that you are constantly going to be a learner, because that's what we are. So just like the students are learning, you're learning as well. And again, like as to create a portfolio, but collecting work, just like you are being analyzed, you analyze the student work, not to just nitpick about what the child did wrong, but areas of improvement. What can you do to assist a student who might need support? You take a look at some of their work and figure out, especially if you have like a cross section of students who might be getting the same problem wrong, or you're seeing them having difficulty in certain area, or even when you taught your lesson, that's feedback for you to sit back and go, wait a second, should I reteach? How do I, pivot and ensure that the students get what they're supposed to receive? And then lastly, looking at those domains, because most evaluation models, I'm familiar with Danielson and Marzano and Strong. Most of them have like 4 domains that you need to look at, or certain criteria that you need to look at. Going back and looking at those domains or those requirements and seeing how you can improve your practice. Like, what is it? And seek out support in any type of tools or materials that will help you to improve your practice. So like, Denise said, and as I'm saying, look at it as it's not a thing that's will be punitive, but it's definitely a growth model. It's a growth tool. And how can you become a better educator or practitioner in the content that you teach?
And to kind of finish up, reflecting and improving. And that's exactly where Keri was going. So we believe the best. We believe the best in our students, in their families. We believe the best in our colleagues. We have to know that everybody means well. Everybody might not have the same perspective as we have, but they mean well. And that's a choice to believe that, decision makers, community members, and probably the most difficult would be ourselves.
Yes.
And a couple people on this call have heard me say this before, but I'd rather be wrong in assuming the best of someone than wrong in assuming the worst. So, and I spent the majority of my career in the middle school, and they will make a fool out of you I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. And if it means that I'm believing the best in you, even if I'm wrong, I think that's going to come back, and that's going to help that student at some point, that they know somebody believes in them.
Yes.
So.
And so I'll kick off the questions to start with. I know you both just shared a lot of information that is wonderful for new teachers to hear. But if we could drill down right down to it, what is each of your biggest pieces of advice for teachers coming into the profession?
I'll go first, Keri.
Okay. My biggest piece of advice. Great. Allow yourself some grace. Like I said, I went alternate route, no traditional training or whatever. Literally just thrown in a classroom, 6th grade classroom in Jersey City with an elderly woman who had retired as my mentor. And she kept saying, "Oh, you're doing a great job." And I'm like, "Help me." Because I was drowning, right? You have to allow yourself some grace. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And again, like I recently had a novice teacher here who I adopted, called them my child, and they had some struggles this year, and they kept saying about themselves, I messed up. And I'm like, you didn't make a mistake. It's an experience. You learn from it. The mistake is not learning from the experience, because now you know what not to do, but you didn't know that before. And so you don't make mistakes. You have experiences, you learn from them, you forgive yourself or allow yourself some grace, and you move on. Has nothing related to do with practice and everything to do with yourself, because you have to think that you're an effective educator. You have to be willing to learn in order to be the best version of yourself when you stand in front of the students. So you don't have time to, woe is me and I messed up. You don't have time for that, because you have lives at stake, the education of these children in the palm of your hand, and you really have to be on your A game. So it's okay to, maybe if you need to cry or scream or, find that thing that you can decompress, because we all need that. And then you got to pick up and move on. So I think that's the best advice that I can give you, is just allow yourself some grace. Be willing to accept that you are not going to be perfect. You're going to be perfectly imperfect all the time, because education changes, and you just need to make sure that you equip yourself with the materials and the tools that you need to be the best version of yourself in front of those students.
Oh, I love that. I'm so inspired. How about obviously I would say kindness to yourself and to others. Catching yourself in your judgment. It's easy to judge people, yourself, your students, their families. Catch yourself in that. And finally, mindfulness. I never learned anything about mindfulness until pretty recently. And I think if I were with teachers and maybe even family members who talked about mindfulness and talked about breathing and talked about anxiety and talking about like learning from each other's, ways to cope with stress, acknowledging that, we could all like kind of establish an environment that we can kind of support each other and learn from each other. So important. But that mindfulness, that's something I didn't know. And that would be helpful, I think. So.
We have a question from Tina. She asked, in September, what is the first most important information to share with new teachers as we start the new year?
Tina's one of my people too.
Tina?
Tina's a Jersey girl. So, yeah, most importantly, they used to tell us back in the day, don't smile until Thanksgiving. And, I get it. It's not nice. How would you go home? Like, I would go home and be like, oh my gosh, this teacher is so mean. This teacher does not like me. This teacher is blah, blah, blah. Yeah, smile, give grace, be kind, definitely set your boundaries. And that comes from the middle school us, like set your boundaries, but give grace.
Right. I agree with what Denise said, because we used to, again, Harry K. Wong, um, Juan was very, it's like a double-edged sword. He was very methodical about things, like the first day of school, certain things that if I were to go back in the classroom, I would still do. For example, I always assign seats. I talk to the teachers behind me and to find out, who should be together and who should not be together. Because once you let the kids sit where they want to sit, you've been hijacked already. So they take that time. So it's okay to assign seats.
Yeah.
And then, be that friendly, Dr. Furlong or Dr. Jones, and, let's do some icebreaker activities. Let's get to know one another. Let's talk about the school, the classroom parameters. Let's talk about some of the repercussions or things that we need to work on together. If you should, first strike, second strike, third strike, what does that look like? I did all that with the students. So yes, Denise is right. You do want to do all the smiley things and connect with your students and get to know them. That's important. But you also really want to have some structure. And believe it or not, kids love structure. I mean, when I talk about the kids that come in here for discipline reasons, I don't have to really yell and scream at them. Like something happened today with kids climbing a tree outside. Like, really, did you really need to climb the tree? Well, no, Dr. Okay, so make me understand why you did it. Well, nobody said so. So then I went back to the teacher and like, listen, you have to make sure, because kids do want structure. And if they don't have structure, they will come back and tell you this kid is disrupting the class, because they do want to learn. So you want to create that kind of environment for them to help them learn and be comfortable.
Totally agree. And Marnie said about that it's easier to start tough and get softer. Absolutely.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Like firm but kind.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Oh,
Could you give an example of being tough?
we do have a couple minutes if you want to field that question. An example of being tough.
Example of being tough. Well,
It's those boundaries.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. And not being flexible with them. So, because you definitely want to, once you start to bend just a little bit, they smell blood and they're coming for you, right? So the being tough is just staying true to the boundaries that you set forth. Here are the classroom parameters. This is what it is. These are the consequences. This is what it is. And not being flexible about that. That's it right there. Once if you know that a kid didn't do their homework one time, two times, three times, just parent contact, don't bargain with them. Like, no, I am reaching out to your parent, period. And that's that. So that's the tough part right there. Sometimes you want to be a little flexible, but in the beginning, you have to stick by your guns. You have to make sure that you don't bend even a little bit, because they smell the blood in the water. They're going to come get you.
Thank you all. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.